Thank you, Senator Ossoff. Senator Romney, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rosico, how do you avoid the failure of imagination that obviously was part of the experience from 9/11? How do you have within your organization the kind of creative, out-of-the-box thinking to imagine what possible threats might come our way?
I appreciate that question, Senator, and it really goes to the sort of the atmosphere you set up in the office, right? I mean, you really I think that CWMD is an unheralded gem within DHS. The best and brightest work there, and they are so dedicated to the country, and they are very willing to think sort of out of the box and think about what's going. And one of the things I always ask them is, what should I have asked you that I didn't even think to ask you? What are you actually thinking about? Besides the questions that I'm asking you, what else are you thinking about? And we try to probe and think about, okay, that's maybe how we always have done it, but how is somebody else who is maybe not dedicated to the cause that we are thinking about doing it? And I'm sure you're familiar with one of our predecessor officers, the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office. They have a process which we're pushing out across. It was a nuclear-related process called the Global Nuclear Detection Architecture, where they sort of mapped out from inspiration or aspiration to execution, what does a terrorist or a bad actor have to go through to execute? And then what, by policy, by screening, by whatever, do we have in place, and where are the gaps? That's atrophied a little bit, but we're re-energizing that thinking, and we're pushing it out across chemical and biological threat streams. I think, because it all comes down to human behavior, right? Technology is one thing, but if you know how the human's going to behave going across the spectrum of aspiration to execution, you can find a way to stop them.
Well, I would think as well that there would be some benefit to probing and listening to people outside of government.
Oh, absolutely.
And having some of the, if you will, not just brilliant thinkers, but just individuals of all kinds suggesting the kinds of things that you might need to look for and consider. I hope our eyes and ears are attuned to what people outside government are thinking about as potential threats or vulnerabilities.
And Senator, that's why I'm so pleased with the bill, because it institutionalizes an advisory council. It mandates that we will consult with our peers in the government, outside the government, academia, industry on a regular basis to understand what they're seeing. We do that now, but my concern is it's a little bit personality based. It needs to be institutionalized so it's done in a repeatable, reliable fashion.
Now, I understand that sensor technology and capability to determine what kinds of attacks might occur, what types of attacks have occurred, is a big part of what you do. To what extent are you also involved in thinking about how to respond to or mediate the conditions, the health conditions, for instance, if an event were to occur, whether it's nuclear, biological, chemical? Does your organization get involved in actually thinking about how to protect the public in the event of an event of that nature?
So actually, Senator, if you don't mind, I'd like to defer that question to Dr. Gandhi, because that really is the focus of the Office of Health Security.
All right, Dr. Gandhi?
Senator, thank you. So we are very focused on ensuring that we are expanding the clinical experts in our office who can provide counsel to CWMD and work hand in hand with our partners across the federal government to deal with that response. So whether it's our partners at ASPR, at HHS, or our partners with FEMA. We have clinical experts now who have expertise in chemical response, biological response, rad-nuke response. The gentleman behind me is skilled in biodefense. And so our role here is to provide that counsel, not just to our federal partners, if and when one of those attacks happen, but also to our state and local partners. And we participate in exercises across the country, preparedness exercises, again, with our partners and then with those across the federal family.
Are there any lessons that you've learned from our response to COVID-19, for instance, that inform your own planning and have adjusted your own planning as a result of what we learned from that ongoing pandemic?
Sure. Senator, perhaps the two most important lessons are, one, that the local ground game matters. I think you've heard often that there's at times little you can do with a screwdriver from Washington to what's happening at the local level. We've spent last year I spent nearly 3 months on the road, and I realized in that process that if we do not equip our local and state partners with data, information, resources, and best practices, we are doing a disservice. And so we are forward-leaning now in ensuring that as we build our regional apparatus, we have got those experts in the field, and we're delivering a product to our local and state partners. And that product may either be our expertise, it may be our ability to integrate data and to share that in real time with our partners. But there is a need for that, and that's what we're focused on building moving forward. I think the second answer to that is that this pandemic has showed us that we have to absolutely be agile. In medicine, we often talk about doing QI work. So when we see a problem we want to improve, we take a plan, do, study, act approach. We plan something, we execute. We study the results of that. And if that doesn't work, we repeat. And so this pandemic has, for us, moving forward for OHS, has ingrained in us the importance of having that quality improvement, that plan, do, study, act mentality, so that we never get stuck or too ingrained in our practices, because the pandemic is dynamic, threats to our homeland are dynamic, and our responses need to be dynamic moving forward, and that we're hoping to institutionalize that in the thought process of this office.
Great. Thank you, Mr.